There is a small announcement. The kit bag of Professor Kamta Prasad has been interchanged. The bag has some personal documents. Everyone is requested to please check their bags, and in case you have interchanged it with his bag, you are requested to drop the bag here at the announcement desk. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have only a few minutes for you to ask some questions. If you have any questions, please raise your hand, and please be brief so that we give a chance to as many people to ask questions as possible. So, any questions, any comments, this is your time. Is there a mic? Why don't you say something? I'll translate it. If you.
My question is primarily to Dr. Gupta, and because he leads the water supply to urban community. Most of the water we consume in our houses, maybe I don't have the statistics, but it could be very large, as large as 60%. We treat the water, we purify, we transport, and then we flush. Do we have a technology, or are we thinking to reduce or have an alternate mechanism to prevent this flushing of water in toilets?
Thank you very much. Rajiv, would you like to answer? I think you better answer. Okay. Very simple. My thesis is very simple. If I price your water right, you will save the water. The wastewater which goes will go down very, very significantly. So in my analysis, there's no other choice for Gujarat or India or anybody else to institute proper water pricing so that you don't flush so many. Your flush should be minimum flush. If you use a washing machine, it should be less. So it's just a question of pricing signal and the efficiency signal. Any more questions?
No, just one moment. I'll just give a brief scenario of the urban and rural water supply in Gujarat. And I'll talk about the region which had faced, of course, severe water scarcity in pre-2000 era. That is Saurashtra and Kutch. In Kutch, the poets used to write poems stating that the girls from Kutch should be married out, and daily drudgery of bringing water from 4-5 kilometers used to create social tensions, and the girls from Kutch, they used to go out. The girls from other parts of Gujarat did not used to prefer to come and get married in Kutch. Now that region, I'm supplying right now about, in total, the pipeline supply of water is about 1300 to 1400 MLD, million liters a day. For others who are not conversant with the million liter terminology, it is almost 130 crore liters of water every day, of which we are supplying about 400 million liters of water to urban areas. The study by Danish Water Forum in a very small pilot area has established that if we increase the efficiency of delivery, then the supply area can still be enlarged. Pricing of water is very important, and we fortunately have a very good pricing mechanism. Our Pani Samitis, the water committees, they are responsible for two things in villages: for determining the tariff and recovery of tariff, and at the same time, O&M, the operation and maintenance of the water distribution system within the villages. My own experience is that in villages, the systems are better in operation than in towns. Now, I still have not been able to figure out why. People are more educated, higher standards of living, supposed to be more responsible most responsible and responsive. Yet, the efficiency of self-management of water delivery systems is better in villages than in towns. So there is some soul searching which is required to be done as far as the urban areas are concerned. And in my initial comments, I said that this is a very delicate issue. The urban, and it's an issue relating to equity also. The urban areas, they are impinging on the water supply, which is supposed to go to the rural areas. So therefore, there has to be a very clear-cut thinking, and there has to be some kind of generation of consciousness in society about the lifestyles in urban areas. We are the only state in the country having standardized the per capita availability of water at the maximum level. The government of India and the earlier standards were that 40 liters per capita per day in rural areas. At that point of time, we made it 70 liters. And recently, in last 1 year, the government of Gujarat is the only government in the whole of country which is designing its water systems on 100 liters per capita per day rural water supply. Our all systems with 30 years life are being designed with that capacity. Urban areas, 140 liters and 160 liters and 180 liters, depending on the type of urban areas we have. But gentlemen, all of us, we need some kind of an introspection as far as the urban consumption of water is concerned. Because much of water wastage, much of tendency to waste the water is found in the urban areas rather than in the rural areas.
Well, thank you very much, Rajiv.
Sir, I have a question.
Beg your pardon? No, there was a lady there who wanted to ask a question. Just one. Unfortunately, we don't have very much time, so you can ask the speaker. The lady was there for a long time. Okay. No? There's a lady behind. I'm not asking you.
It's me, no? Hi,
Please.
I'm from Nepal, and I have a question for the last speaker who was talking about solar pumps. And I just want to say that in Nepal we have more than 300 days of sunshine, and we are still using the solar lights in the city area. And I would like to invite him to Nepal and introduce his system so that we can also use this facility in Nepal. And I would also like to thank the representative from EC Mode for working so hard to make the life of Himalayan and the flood people and to make the better environment in Nepal. Thank you. I'd like to invite the solar pump in Nepal.
Thank you very much. I think that's more of a comment. One quick last question.
Actually, I just listened your address also, and I just, what you said, that there is no requirement of manager. It's a question of managing the waters, what you said. And there is no requirement of saving the water. Sir, I have one point. Actually, average water demand per capita is 1700 cubic meter per person per year. And it was in the year 2011. And every day population is increasing, and even in Gujarat it is 1000 cubic meter per person is available water. Particularly in Kutch and Saurashtra, it has gone to 600 cubic meter per person per year. So the whatever is available is going on decreasing day by day because the population is increasing. Now the population is 125 crores. And if it will reach to, say, 250 crore, water available will be the same. Because water resources is only rain.
Yes. Okay.
So if you will not save water.
I think your assumption is fundamentally wrong. Water is not like a mineral resources. When you talk about population of water, that's not correct. The water can be used, reused, and reused continually. So when you see, if the world had two people, one person with the two people, and each one of them have 50% of the water resources of the world, if there are 2 children, there are 4 people, it reduced to 25% of the water resources. So this water people relation really has no, in my mind, has no meaning. It's if it was a mineral resources, yes, because after you use, it disappears. With water, you use and reuse and reuse again. So this idea which people have put together that our per capita water availability is going down, that is ridiculous, because you can use the water umpteen times, as we are doing in Singapore. I don't know how many times we're using, maybe 20, 30 times. So let's not go into that detail. I would like to say thank you very much for our speakers for this session. We appreciate very much, and you gave us actually many food for thought, at least for me. You gave us many things to think over. Thank you very much. And I will now hand over to Jeremy Bird for the last session.
Okay, thank you very much. If we could settle down, please, we'll start the last session of this seminar. So John Russell from Shell. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and it's a great pleasure to be standing here on a podium with so many really sort of thoughtful people and thought leaders in the space of urban development and water management, and particularly thanks to Professor Biswas and Dr. Gupta. I'd just like to speak to you just very shortly today about some work that we're doing with the city of Surat in Gujarat. This is work that we're doing in collaboration with Veolia. So Shell is one of the leading energy companies in the world, and Veolia is one of the leading environmental services and management companies in the world. And we're collaborating really to look at how we can craft solutions, urban development solutions in water, waste, energy, transport for the people of Surat, working collaboratively with the Surat Municipal Commission and with the South Gujarat Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So really just to say that, to start off with, we think that the reason that we're looking at cities and looking at Surat in particular is that we think city development is a huge phenomenon in the modern world, which is going to affect our use of resources, water in particular, as well as energy, in a very, very significant way. As we can see from this, in 2007, nearly half the world population was living in cities. That's likely to be 3/4 of the world population by 2050. And we're building the equivalent of a new city of 1.4 million people every week. So that's the equivalent of a New York City every 6 weeks. That puts enormous stresses and strains on our on resources, and that's something, particularly in energy and water. And we think that that's something that we really need to understand, both for the good of the world, but also for understanding as well for us as a company where that may take us. And this just shows you some of the kind of challenges that creates. You're seeing almost a doubling in world energy consumption because of population growth in total. And out of that, the share of energy use that's going into cities in urban areas is growing enormously, so from 66% to 79%. So we've got a joint approach in working with Surat. We've really tried to focus in looking at issues to do with how we can support economic growth and quality of life in Surat, how we can drive resource efficiencies, improve air quality, and also help the move towards a circular economy. Now, we're focusing on Surat as a city, particularly because it encapsulates for us vibrant Gujarat. It's a city with a growing population, 4.5 million in 2011, anticipated to be 8 million by 2020. It's got a significant industrial base. It's a growing economy, particularly in the textile and diamond industries, which are world-renowned. And this economic growth and population growth creates enormous opportunities for the people of Surat, but also creates big challenges. And those challenges remain in terms of reliability of energy supply, how transport can cope with this growing population, and water management as well, and how the management of water can really sort of feed into that. And finally, in terms of waste management as well. Now, this is a city, though, that's taken great strides in terms of how it's dealt with this, and is proving a really fantastic partner with us, particularly with the Municipal Commission and the Chamber of Commerce, to really think about some of these issues, and has already taken big strides in terms of waste and water management already. So it's been a great partner to work collaboratively with Shell and with Veolia to try and think about some of these challenges and the solutions. So our approach has been very much, rather than to come along as a big global company or two global companies and say, hey, we've got all the answers to the issues that you face, we've really spent some time really sitting down with the people of Gujarat and key stakeholders in Gujarat to understand the concerns and constraints that the city faces, the opportunities as well, and also to identify the city aspirations. Where does it want to be? And that starts us on a journey of really trying to craft some of the kinds of solutions that we think can come out from that. And our idea is to collaborate closely, bringing our global expertise in energy and water and waste management, to combine that with the local knowledge to try and craft some of those solutions that create a better environment here. Co-create is really the watchword here. And then finally, to think about how we can deliver these. It's not good enough for us just to come along with some ideas. We want to think about how those can actually happen in practice, with the aim of really working with Surat to develop a plan for a sustainable urbanised environment. And really the core issues we'd like to address when we're working with Surat are: how can we improve the reliability and resilience of infrastructure within the city? Big pressures environmentally. Surat experiences flooding fairly regularly. Environmental stresses are quite significant. The reliability and resilience of infrastructure is important there. It's got to be cost effective. It's no good for these solutions to be good for the environment if they don't work for industries, for the population there in a cost effective manner. It's got to be able to reduce the footprint, the environmental footprint, improve energy efficiency, and also we want to look at how you can deploy new innovative technologies that can help to develop the infrastructure in Surat. So what have we done? We've started, quite a complicated slide here, but it's really to show that we've started to map the infrastructure in Surat, to map the infrastructure systems in Surat. And as you can see from this, the main point to say here is that these are interconnected. These are hugely interconnected, all these systems. So when you think about the solution space, you have to think of all these interconnections together. It's no point looking at it just in one silo. We have to think of these things together. And you can see here some of the ideas that can really start to drive progress here. So really, what are we looking at? What are we looking at some of the solution space in Surat? Well, we think in terms of energy demand and supply, we think there are big opportunities to create greater efficiencies, particularly in the industrial sector. And we're working with partners in the textile sector in Surat to really try and understand are there ways in which we can reduce energy consumption there, move to cleaner fuels, mixtures of hydrocarbons, cleaner hydrocarbons and renewables. And the ideas around microgrid, distributed microgrids, and particularly around community combined heat and power here, where we can both generate steam that's used in the textile processing facilities, and also generate power at the same time. We also think that there is more that could be done in terms of waste management in the city. There's a better approach in terms of segregation. We could use some of the informal workers more effectively, the informal employment sector in Surat, to segregate waste, and then to weave that into a system where you can use that to generate energy. We could also improve the use of sewage waste in terms of biogas and inject that into the energy system as well. We're also looking at how water systems could be improved. There's a lot, as we said, there's resilience pressures in terms of Surat, in terms of water supply and water management. And we think these put some quite big stresses on the city. We can look at ways in which we can recycle water, particularly into the industrial sector. And this is where the links and interconnections come back into the plan I showed you before. How can we weave that into the energy supply mix here? So we could recycle water to generate and put that back into the industrial sector to generate steam. And that means there's less stresses on water in that space. And then also thinking about transport here. How can we reduce private transport emissions? Private transport growth is very large in Surat. And what's the potential there to reduce that? Surat already has an effective bus rapid transit system, but are there ways in which we could create feeder routes to join the main arterial routes and get people out of three-wheelers, get them out of sort of more polluting vehicles into public transport? Are there also opportunities there for fuel switching? Shell has recently just started to develop IH2 technology, which takes biomass and turns it into low CO2 usable gasoline. So there's a way in which we can use technology that's proprietary to Shell to start to bring different solutions into this. But I think the message here is really to say that these solutions all need to be integrated together. When you look at just one area of these solutions, it starts to spin off into others. So if we think about the microgrids and combined CHP in the industrial sector, that creates issues to do with waste, it creates issues to do with water use, which really have to interconnect in terms of creating those solutions. But we think we're on a journey here. We think our collaboration with Surat has been really productive, and there are some really exciting ideas in here. And we look forward to working with them in the future. And we think there's also, if we're successful with this, can create lessons that could be learned and transmitted through to Gujarat and wider India as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Russell, for sharing your thoughts with us. Our next speaker is Mr. John Jensen, Chairman, Danish Water Forum.
I've got 10 minutes, I just heard. 7 minutes, okay. We are running late, so I'll try to do it short. Honorable guests, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers and especially Dr. Gupta for giving me this opportunity to present the Danish approach to water management. A lot have been said about the issues connected to water, so I will not talk about that. But I really think, humbly think that we in Denmark has a lot to offer in the way we do things to the rest of the world. So that's I will focus on. So in Denmark we are in a very special situation since all drinking water supply for all purposes in fact is relying entirely on groundwater. This is our burning platform and this is the bottom line for us. So when we talk about water security and water management, of course it serves multiple purposes, but first of all, of course, to ensure supply of safe and enough drinking water. But it also, of course, is about protection of groundwater, of water bodies against contamination. It is about ensuring climate change resilience, which have been said earlier today. And it's also in Europe, of course, to ensure compliance with the Water Framework Directive. So from that basis, I would say that in Denmark, the water management, the integrated water management rests on 6 ground pillars. We have a very strong tradition, we have a long history to do this. We have a strong knowledge base, research base. We have national commitment. We have a transparent and a non-bureaucratic regulatory system, which is very, very important. We have partnerships across the sector, and we have a political concern and awareness. So I will go a little bit deeper into those 6 ground pillars within the 4 minutes left I think I've got. First of all, the tradition and the history. We got the first Water Supply Act in 1926, and I think that's quite early relative to many other countries. We got the Minister of Environment in 1971, and we got the first environmental agency in 1972. And from there on, we have been focusing on environment and water very heavily in Denmark since. So this is the tradition we base our water management on, and I think this is very important for us. Then we have a very strong knowledge and research base. I think that the Minister of Environment in Denmark, they engage themselves very, very strongly in RTD and innovation in Denmark, and that's very important. It's not only the Minister of Research and Innovation, but it's also the Minister of Environment. So I just mentioned here in the slide some of the programs which have been launched within the last 20 years or so, and there are many, many others, and there have been spent a lot of resources on developing tools and practices in Denmark on water management. Oh, what's going on here? Well, then the third one is national commitment. I think this is also important, and I've just listed here, and I will not go deeper into this, but some of the major programs which have been launched within the last 20, 30 years, and a lot of resources have been spent, as you can see. You have to remember that we are a little country with 5 million people, and then so the figures you see here are quite big, not comparable to what figures are spent elsewhere. But in Denmark, it's quite huge figures on major water management program during the last 20 years. So this gives, of course, a lot of focus on water management, but that's also very important, as I said. And then we, as I said, have a very logical system, very logical regulatory systems. There's a logical sharing of responsibilities between the different levels, as you can see. Nobody or everybody knows what they have to do, and when you approach the authorities, you always know where to open the doors. So this is also important for us and how we do things in Denmark. And then, last but not the least, is the partnerships. That's how we work in Denmark. We work in partnerships. We work together, the industry, the companies, the organization, research, institutions, and authorities. To create solutions, we always work together in partnerships. And I think, first of all, that creates ownership to the solutions developed, and that creates also consensus. And consensus is very, very important when you should implement the different solutions. So this is how we work, and I have a few examples of that. I have not time to 2 minutes. I have a little bit of time. This is one example from last year and from 2010 to 14, where we created a partnership on water in urban areas, where we gathered 130 institutional partners from across the sector to work on solutions for water management in urban areas. And they created a lot of projects within these partnerships and came up with different solutions to different challenges in the urban area domain. So this is one strategic partnership which I can mention. Another one is for branding of Danish water expertise internationally. We called it Rethink Water, where we also gathered a number. I think I've written here 70 companies, organizations, and institutions specializing in water efficiency, to present that to the world in different white papers, small videos, and so on and so forth. So now we have a toolbox when we go abroad to present Danish expertise and competencies, which has been developed in this partnership. So that was 2 examples of partnerships. The seventh or the sixth, I think, ground pillar was public awareness. As you know, as I also told you, we rely entirely on groundwater for drinking water supply, but we also have water around us, all of us. We all know how important water is for all of us, not just to drink, but for all other purposes. So there's a very, very high awareness in Denmark on water. So that gives a public concern which is driving all the political intentions. So that's very good for us also. So Denmark knows water, so that will be my last words. Thank you very much for your...
Thank you, Mr. Jensen, for sharing your expert views with us. Our last speaker is Professor Taiken Oki. He works with the Institute of Industrial Science, University of Tokyo, Japan.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. And I'd like to thank to the ACID Viswas that his invitation to join to this meeting. Actually, more than 15 years ago, that he organized a group of the next generation water leaders, and just before the Second World War Forum, and he invited me as a member of that next generation water leaders. I'm not sure that I could be the water leader at this moment, but hopefully that I can tell you there are some messages which Dr. Pachauri will never pick up and deliver to you, because that this is, I think that I picked up some messages relevant for that water management. And can you see the photo there on the display? This is the IPCC plenary held in March last year in Yokohama. And like this, that there are 3 screens. One screen shows the draft of the summary for policymakers, and sentence by sentences that the chair asks the delegates from each nation, and do you have any question or comments? And some delegate says, please add. My country is suffering from drought and floods, so why don't you write it? Or some nation says, this sentence is too weak, so delete it. And actually, the center, can you see that I'm defending my part? And I picked up some message from that. And one is climate change poses risks for human and natural systems. And the changes in both climate system and socioeconomic processes, including mitigation and adaptation, are the drivers of the hazards, exposure, and vulnerability. So that when we talk about the climate change, always we think that how the rainfall pattern will be changed or the drought pattern will be changed. However, that David, I think you said that the social changes, that we are living in a more vulnerable place, or that we are living in a house that are more vulnerable for the water-related hazards, that will also drive the change in the risks related to climate change. That is one point. And also adaptation is becoming embedded in some planning processes. The first step towards adaptation to future climate change is reducing that, I cannot see. Vulnerability and exposure to present climate change vulnerabilities. So that when we think about the future, of course, we have to prepare for the future climate change. But at first step, what we can do is to reduce the risks to the current climate change. Even without the further climate change, we are at risk of the water-related hazards like floods, drought, and landslides, and etc., and water quality accidents. Okay, and to my mind, that one of the example of the current vulnerability or risks was that appeared in a flood in Thailand in 2011. Can you see the photo here? This is the Honda automobile factory, and you see that cars are in the dirt, but still aligned Japanese style too. Okay, and it had a lot of water inundated, and a lot of people are killed, and a lot of people, like 1,000, no, people, 10 million people are affected. But more than that, 800 factories in 7 industry parks were submerged, and half of that were Japanese-related factories, okay? And economic damage was estimated to be nearly 2 trillion baht, that corresponds to more than $40 billion US, and it damped the whole yearly annual economic growth, expect to be 9% to 0. And more than that, let me tell you that what happened in 2011, that the insurance company of Japan paid to the Japanese industries nearly $9 billion US of insurance payment for the Japan-related factories. You should know that in 2011, we had a big earthquake and tsunami, but the payment for that was only $6 billion US insurance payment. So, of course, there are some systems that the earthquakes, you have to have the extra insurance, but anyway, for the Japanese industry, not for the domestic natural disaster, but the overseas disaster caused more damages to the Japanese industry. So there are the 2 implications, I think, for India from this lesson. One is, do not only think about water security or the national disaster security within your nation, because under the globalized economy, supply chain, value chain is all over the world. So they are interconnected. So the one natural disaster or the climate change related disaster will have an impact to your business from everywhere. And the second implication is that the India develops and your international reputation increase, then you have to secure your own nation to secure the world water security, because that problem in India will affect to the all over the world. For the Thailand case, it was the center of the hard disk and also the parts of the automobiles. And the latter half of 2011, the hard drives are so expensive, and the automobiles, some factories stopped their operation. So you have to secure your factory for the world. That is the two lessons from this Thailand. 1 minute, okay. And okay, then afterwards you can see that our chapter freshwater resources of the working to IPCC, but this figure says, upper figure shows that bluish color indicates the flood increase, and reddish color indicates that flood frequency will reduce. The lower figure shows that how the low flow that related to the drought and water resources will be increased for bluish region, and yellowish region that the low flow will reduce. There are some parts of the world, flood frequency increases and drought frequency would increase. So not only the flood or drought, both we have to concern in some regions, and unfortunately the southern Asia is covered by the flood will be increased, and also that low flow will be reduced. Okay, and there are some adaptation measures for climate change on water, but the points are, for example, that flood embankment and reservoirs will be a good adaptation measure, but it may have the adverse impacts on ecosystems, or the desalination of seawater. It could be good to secure the water resources. However, it may contradictory for the mitigation actions to reduce the carbon dioxide emission. Okay, I will go to the final slide. Oh. The remarks is mitigation and adaptation can be integrated into the water resources management, land planning, disaster risk management, and sustainable development. So we should not plan separately. These plans should be integrated holistic way, and significant co-benefits, synergies, and trade-off exist between the mitigation and adaptation, and among different adaptation responses. Interactions occur both with and within and across regions. And the last point that I think is also very important point is people in a society may perceive or rank risks or potential benefits differently, given diverse values and goals. Therefore, as the previous speaker says, we need a communication and co-work to decide which way we have to go, how to prioritize the adaptation and mitigation measures. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for your lively talk. And this brings us to the end of the session, question and answer now.
So thank you very much. I think we have 5 or so minutes for questions for those 3 speakers. Interesting. I think integration comes out very strongly in those, integration around planning for the future of these fast developing urban areas, integration and R&D, investment for groundwater development, and also what happens if you don't take climate change seriously and the need to integrate that into planning processes. So I think a couple of hands already. We'll take a couple of questions. Just the lady here first, and then the gentleman behind her. Can you use a microphone, please? Is there a microphone coming, please? Just coming. Here, it's in the middle. In the middle here.
I can speak very loudly.
Go ahead. Please, go ahead.
My point is that if you're integrating
Please take the microphone.
It's also extremely vital to integrate women's perspectives. And this forum has had not a single woman participant there. I think our plans are going to be faulty. Our implementation is going to be pretty biased. And one of the major groups which can contribute to both the solutions and needs to benefit from those solutions will be left out of the game. So it's really sad that the only woman I saw here at the platform was the Chief Minister.
Okay.
And I hope that the organizers can take this into account in the future. I saw the same thing for the period that I was in the Smart Cities seminar as well.
Yeah. Okay.
I need to make that point really loudly.
It's a very important point, and I think the whole issue of gender and gender mainstreaming is extremely important. So behind, I think can we just take a few more questions first and then come back to everybody to answer? Just two more questions and then we'll come back to the panel.
Thank you. A question for the gentleman from Shell. I enjoyed your presentation a lot. What advice would you have to other companies that would like to engage with cities in a similar way for how they should do it?
Okay, any more questions before we come back to the panel? I can't see any more hands. No? Okay, please. So, yes, Rajat Gupta, please.
I would request the lady to introduce herself, please.
My name is Seema Paul. I work for the Nature Conservancy.
Okay. Now, why there is no lady speaker is only incidental. One of the very important lady speakers and the rapporteur, Cecilia Tortajada, could not come because of very pressing personal reasons. However, one important person from the organizer side, the rapporteur, is Nishtha Manocha, and she is going to wrap up the entire report being published by the Third World Water Management Center as a book. Another very important lady organizer is Rini Dutt, who has been consistently for the last 6 months working to make the seminar a success. So simply an incidental absence of a woman speaker should in no way be construed as non-participation by women in this seminar. That is one. Number two, I hope you know something about Gujarat, and I have no idea where you're working. But in Gujarat, the entire water distribution system is being managed largely by women in the villages. Of the 18,000 Pani Samitis that we have, more than 7,000 Pani Samitis constitute more than 50% women in each. And Government of Gujarat, from this year, under the first woman chief minister, has declared a policy of giving extra incentive to women water committees, which are headed by women. So we have specially allocated a fund of more than 1 crore of rupees to give to each of these 1 lakh to each samiti, wherein the chairman of the samiti is a woman. More than 5,000 committees, the water distribution committees, are headed by women. So in no circumstances, I think we should not be driven more by our sentiments, but by the actual facts and figures that are operating here in Gujarat.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. I think we're living, as we heard from the private sector today, we're living in a world of setting ourselves targets, water reduction, efficiency, these sorts of things. Maybe we should set ourselves a target for the next 2-year summit, that there will be 50% women on the dais here in the next summit. So that's an interesting one. Now, I think there was a question, first of all, for Shell, and I think, Bjorn, you also wanted to make... Yeah. Please, if you take the microphone here.
Yeah. Yeah, very good question. I think my main message is listen a lot to what people are telling you. You know, these things don't work if you go along with a bunch of pre-cooked ideas. You've got to spend some time actually on the ground in these places to actually really understand what people are telling you about what they regard as the challenges, the opportunities, their ambitions for the city, and also what solutions work and what their objectives are, because they may not be the same as yours. I'd also say that having local presence in the city helps enormously as well. So I couldn't have got anywhere in any kind of traction if I hadn't been engaging with our colleagues in Hazira LNG terminal. Nitin Shukla, who's the CEO of Hazira, has been instrumental in establishing the relations that we've now developed with Mr. Tarawani as the municipal commissioner in Surat, and Mr. Yagnik as the head of the SGCCI. So those kind of local on the ground contacts have really really made it sort of a really interactive process. So listen and work those contacts on the ground, I think, are my two messages.
Thanks very much. And there's one short comment from Bjorn, please.
Yeah, just a short comment to the women. I think the future belongs to you. There's a new organization just created in Denmark, in which is called the Young Water Professionals, and 75% of the members are women.
Thank you. I'm terribly sorry. I think we've run out of time for this session, but I'd like you to thank the speakers, please, for their contribution, and I'd like to thank you as well for your participation. Thank you. Now, Dr. Biswas.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to the end of the seminar. I'll just take a couple of minutes to let you know what happens next, because this is going to be a very different seminar compared to the other seminars. After this meeting, Nistha Manocha and Rini and Cecilia are going to put their heads together to prepare a report, which will be published extensively both in the Indian media and the international media. And all the papers here will be peer-reviewed and published as a book probably by October or so. So any of you who might be interested to get a copy of the report of this particular seminar, which should be ready within a month or so, please leave your cards with Nistha Manocha. Nistha, would you please stand up? Nistha, would you please? And also Rini. So can you please give your card either to Nistha or to Rini? And we'll make sure you'll get the report. Now all it remains for me to thank the wonderful support I have received from Rajiv, from you, your staff members, and all the members of GNFC and your department. I'm really, truly grateful, because without his personal help, Rajiv's personal help, there's not a hope in hell I could have put a group together like this. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all the speakers. I know you guys are very busy. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it very much. And I'm going to now bug you for the papers. And most important of all, you as listeners and the participants, thank you for your presence. Thank you for the questions. And thank you for all the networks we'll develop during this period. So this meeting is over. So thank you very much. And have a very successful rest of the year. Thank you.
I have an important announcement to make. Honorable Chief Minister has invited all the speakers in the Gold Star Dining for having lunch with her. So all of us will go as a group. Thank you.